So, we've looked at fractions in a couple of different ways. Okay, first off, we have looked at it as like taking a circle and breaking it into equal pieces like a pie. Okay, so we've also taken a square or a rectangle and broken it into even pieces, right? Because that's what fractions are. They're equal pieces, they're equal size. We've also taken the amount of things. Like if I have 5 crayons and 2 of them are red, what's the fraction that's red? And we say, okay, well, it's 2/5 because there's 5 things total. Well, now we're going to take one of these number lines. We're going to pretend these 4 lines are number lines, and we're going to break them into fractions by breaking them into equal pieces. So you have a paper on your desk right now. And the very first thing, doesn't it say break it into halves? It says break it into halves. Usually number 1 it says halves. And we're going to call this one right here our halves. All right? Halves. Okay? Now, if I'm going to break this number line into halves, how many pieces am I going to break it into? How many pieces am I going to break this line into if I'm breaking it into halves? Make it a half. Jamie. Yeah, 2 equal pieces. Now, if I had a ruler, I'd measure it out, but I don't. We'll say it's like right here. Boom. Okay? So you see how on this side it's the same length as this side. So how would you measure this part of the number line? How would you label it? What fraction is from this point to this point of this whole number line?
1/2.
Yeah, 1/2, 1/2. What about this side over here? What would it be? Bella? 1/2. Boom. Okay. Now, I'm going to skip thirds for right now. You're going to have to do that in a minute. But I'm going to go on to fourths. Now, if I have fourths, you know how many pieces, equal pieces, do I need to break this number line into? 4, yeah. So, first off, you know what's the easy way to do that? I'm going to make it into a half first, and then I'm going to break each of these pieces into half. So this side I'm going to make it into half about right here, and this side I'm going to make it into a half about right here. And see, now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 that are, since I didn't measure, you know, they're about the same length, aren't they, on my number line? Okay? So what am I going to label this one? What am I going to label this part of my number line right here? What am I going to label it?
1/4.
1/4, Robert, that's right. What am I going to label this one right here? Cody?
1/4.
1/4. What am I going to label this one right here?
1/4.
1/4. What? Oops, I made that a half. I need to make that 1/4. And what about this last one? Mia?
1/4.
Yeah. Now, do any of these lines line up? Like, we know I make these marks. Are there any lines that line up on this one? They're in the same place on this one, this number line as this number line?
Yes, there is in the middle.
In the middle. Now, we're going to get to something called equivalent fractions. Not today. Not even tomorrow. But next week. Okay? Equivalent fractions mean fractions that are the same amount. Like, you know, if I cut a pizza into 2 pieces and I cut a pizza into 4 pieces, how many of those pieces are going to be the same amount of pizza? Like, what? Okay, now let's look. 1/2 and 1/4, they're the same, aren't they? How many fourths does it take me to get to the middle? How many fourths does it take? 2. This is basically 2/4. And how many halves does it take to get to the middle?
Like about 1?
1. So we know that 1/2 equals 2/4. Because it's the same. I went the same amount of distance in 2/4 as I did in 1/2.
Oh,
1/2, okay? Yes. Okay? Now, let's look at 8ths now. How many times do I have to break this line, okay, to make 8ths? Olivia,
8 times.
8 times. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to break it into half. I'm going to break those halves into halves. Now I have 4. And I'm going to break those fourths into halves. And I'm going to have 8. About right there. About right there. About right there. And about right there. Okay? Those are my 8ths. Okay? So, what am I going to label each of these segments of my number line for my fraction? Cody?
1/8.
Yeah, 1/8. Each of these is 1/8. 1/8. 1/8. I know this is looking kind of messy. 8. It says 1/8. Now, I have a question. I have a question for you. How many? If I have 1/2, how many 8ths does it take to get to 1/2? How many segments of my line on the 8ths? Jamie, think it's 4? Let's see. Right here, let's see, this line goes down. Right about here. 1/2. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Yep. 1/2 equals 4/8. Okay. So just like with shapes, when we're breaking our number line into fractions, we break into equal pieces depending on how much it is.